Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name's Rox and today's video is going to be about the top 10 books I read in 2020. 2020 wasn't the best reading year for me because I only read I think 67 books, which was much less than my goal, but I'm like, it's fine, we were in a global pandemic, it's fine. But quality wise, I think I read more 5-star books than previous years, and also I didn't read like any 1-star books. I had a few 2-star, few 3-star, a lot of 4-star, and then 17 5-star books. But from the 17 5-star books, there are like 10 that are my ultimate favorites, and I'm going to be telling you about them today. I've tried to rank them, but honestly it was such a random order. I think the only one that's really like in the correct spot is like my number one favorite, which I'm very excited about. But all the rest are like in a kind of random order. I've spoken about a few of these books before, so like it's fine, just listen to it again. You can like double tap the screen and like skip 5 seconds and then you miss a part of the video. The number 10 book that I really enjoyed was Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Seanan McGuire, and it's the second book in the Wayward Children series. This is like a young adult fantasy series, but like each book is very short. It's like maybe 200 pages max, I think. Currently there are 6 books out, or no, there are 5 books out. The 6th one is coming out this year, and I really want to read it. But yes, Down Among the Sticks and Bones is the second book in the series, and it was by far my favorite. I can't tell you why I liked it, but it does follow the twins Jack and Jill, and they go to this like really scary type of world. I think it's like a moorlands, but anyway, I really enjoyed it. I thought the writing was really cool, and I was intrigued by the story. The novella is pretty short, which kind of makes it difficult to become one of my favorite novellas of all time. But even though it's so short, you know the characters from the first book. So you know the characters from the first book and the second book, you just kind of fall more in love with them. I had a really good time, and I was very excited. The 5th book, which came out in 2020, was the conclusion to these twin stories. So I've previously explained, you can read the series kind of out of order, but I read it in like the correct order as they came out. Well, I didn't read it as they came out. I only read the second book this year. I read them in the order they were published. But the 5th book concludes the story of Jack and Jill, and I had just as much fun with that one. But Down Among the Sticks and Bones was by far my favorite. Number 9 on my list is Symmetra Boys by Aiden Thomas. Symmetra Boys is a young adult fantasy, and it follows Yadriel, who is a young trans boy kind of struggling with his family accepting his identity. There's a lot of magic in this book. It is a young adult fantasy, so there's magic in the world, and Yadriel kind of accidentally summons a ghost who turns out to be the school's bad boy, and they kind of fall in love. It is a very cute story, but also a lot of fun with the magical elements. I'm not part of the Latinx community, but it was interesting reading about it because the author is, so it's her own voices book. Now, Aiden Thomas did make history by being the first openly trans author to make the New York Times bestseller list with a book centering a trans character. Just thinking of all the little trans boys who get to see this happen. And besides this being such a historic accomplishment, the book is just also really good, really fun, so well written, so informative. And it was a little predictable, but you know what? I was there for it because I thought the romance was pretty sweet. Like very cute, V cute. And I also liked Adrielle, the main character's best friend. I think her name was Maritza. She was just the best. I had so much fun with her, and she was vegan. The 8th book on my list, I think, is a very popular one, and I do think I've mentioned it before, but it's actually, when I first read it, I gave it 4 stars because it's like, this is good, but there's a lot that's lacking, I think, in it. But I can't stop thinking about it, and I think it's a really good book, and I can't wait for the second one to come out. And this one I actually own physically. So, 9th House by Leigh Bardugo. So obviously Leigh Bardugo is already a very popular author, but this is the first and only book I've read by her. So for me, it's a new author, but this book was so good. I had so much fun reading it, and the more time after I've read it, the more I think about it. The reason I gave it 4 stars in the beginning was because I thought the world building was pretty like dense, but the more I thought about it, as I've just said, it's like quite necessary because it builds the world. Wow, mind blowing. The world building is what builds the world. Put it on a t-shirt. Highly recommend this one. but I guess it wouldn't be for everyone. It's dark academia. It follows this girl Alex, who's like my new favorite character. She gets a scholarship to Yale, but she's also kind of tasked with trying to monitor different societies, because they all kind of use like black magic to do shit, you know, like cut open someone, get their little derums, I don't know what derums are in English, intestines out, and like shape them around, read the future a bit. So it's very dark. What made this book one of my favorites for the year is the characters. I really like the characters. All of them. Darlington, Alex, Pam, they're all really just great characters. They're well-rounded, and they just have a really great relationship with each other, and seeing those interactions are like what puts it like over the top for me. So that's why this book is definitely one of my favorites for the year. And I can't wait for this. I need the second book. It's coming out this year, but I checked yesterday and there's still no cover, and we still don't know the name of the book. It just says like Alex Stern book 2, and I'm like, Then book number 7 on my list is actually a book that I read for a video, which I never ended up making, but I probably will still make it. Anyway, it's a non-fiction, and that is Smoke Gets in Your Eyes by Caitlin Doughty. So Caitlin works at a crematorium, or she used to work there. She has a channel on YouTube now, actually, which is also very interesting. But she used to work at a crematorium, so she just kind of goes into her experiences of working there and what it's like. And I thought it was very interesting. It like made me question a lot of things about death and what I want to happen to my body. Does that make sense? When I die, like something has to happen with my body. Like I told my parents to just wrap me up in like a piece of cloth and put me under a tree on the farm, and they said no. It also goes into the laws a bit, which was very interesting, but that made me curious about what the laws would be here in Namibia, because I don't know any about the laws about crematoriums or even like funeral directors or what happens when you die. Like I know your body gets like, you get an autopsy depending on where or how you die, but you know, I don't know the law surrounding that. I thought that was very interesting. It kind of made me want to read more books dealing with death, because death is such a like taboo topic, although it's like it's the one thing that's guaranteed in your life. It's also very short, which makes it great, but I can see why it's not for everyone. I don't think it is, because if you're very sensitive about death, then maybe don't read it. There's also like, she talks about babies, so can you see where I'm going with this? She talks about babies. I wish more people that worked at crematoriums would write books, and I'd read all of them. The 6th book on my list is another one that I've already talked about, but you know, I need to mention it because it's still one of my favorites for the year, and that was Mijo by Cacho. The 2nd book is also out, and I've ordered it, but I've not received it yet, and I really want to read it. But I don't think it's necessarily a sequel. I think it's more just like a spin-off. The book takes place in Seoul, Korea, and it follows this little girl, Mi-young, and she is a gumiho, which is a 9-tailed fox. It has a lot to do with Korean mythology, which is the reason I liked it, because I don't know anything about Korean mythology. I don't know anything about mythology in general. It's not a topic I'm interested in, but I really liked it in this book. It's also written very like a Korean drama, which is something I was promised before I read it. I was like, I'm expecting the Korean drama vibes from this, because a lot of the reviews mentioned it, and it very much works. You know, it is very true, and 100%, yes, it does have the Korean drama vibes. So what happens, right, is that this Ji-hoon, he witnesses Mi-young kind of turning into the 9-tailed fox, and no one is supposed to see this. And then she loses her like bead, which is kind of the essence of her power, and the story just kind of follows her trying to get it back. And I really loved Ji-hoon's friends and his grandmother. She's also such a lovely character to read about. I think this is a very like wholesome book. I would classify it as that. Maybe not, but I would. So again, it's young adult fantasy, but very romance heavy. It is, yeah, but that just makes it sweet, I think. I like that about this book. Number 5 on my list, I don't have a physical copy of this book, but that is All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. So this was another non-fiction, but this one was more biography / memoir. I don't really know how to explain this one, so I'm just going to read you the synopsis from Goodreads. All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. In a series of personal essays, prominent journalist and LGBTQIA+ activist George M. Johnson explores his childhood, adolescence, and college years in New Jersey and Virginia. From the memories of getting his teeth kicked out by bullies at age 5 to flea marketing with his loving grandmother to his first sexual relationships, this young adult memoir weaves together the trials and triumphs faced by Black queer boys. Both a primer for teens eager to be allies, as well as a reassuring testimony for young queer men of color. All Boys Aren't Blue covers topics such as gender identity, toxic masculinity, brotherhood, family, structural marginalization, consent, and Black joy. Johnson's emotionally frank style of writing will appeal directly to young adults. That's actually a very nice description, which is why I read it and didn't just talk. I listened to the audiobook for this one, which was narrated by the author, which was just always, I kind of highly prefer the audiobooks narrated by the author. It deals with so many topics, and it's just, I think, good reading it from the perspective of that person, you know, like you get the own voices, experience, information. Do you know what I mean? It's one of those books that I think can make you just a little bit more empathetic and understand someone's situation, someone else's situation, which is why I think this book is very important. Yeah, I gave it 5 stars, and it's like my first favorite book of the year. Really, truly, utterly enjoyed it. I think I listened to the audiobook in like a day, 2 days, because I couldn't put it down. I wanted to know where George M. Johnson was gonna end up. Yeah. Number 4 on my list is another very short novella. So for this one, I'm also going to read you the Goodreads description, because the description I think really puts into perspective what the book is about. Like I said, it's a very short novella. It was only translated this year, I think, and it's called Kim Ji-young, born 1982, by Cho Nam-ju. It was written by Cho Nam-ju, but Jamie Chang was the one who translated the book. So Kim Ji-young is the most common name for Korean woman born in the 1980s. Kim Ji-young is representative of her generation. At home, she is an unfavored sister to her princeling little brother. In primary school, she's a girl who has to line up behind the boys at lunchtime. In high school, she's a daughter whose father blames her for being harassed late at night. In university, she's a good student who doesn't get put forward for internships by her professor. In the office, she's an exemplary employee who's overlooked for promotion by her manager. At home, she's a wife who has given up her career to take care of her husband and baby. There's a bit more, but I'm not going to get into that. I just wanted to read that first part. Basically, I felt in the story a lot of times it happened that Kim Ji-young just kind of loses her identity because she becomes every woman in especially Korea. These things do happen all over the world. Even here in Namibia, these things definitely happen. But she becomes like every woman, almost a nameless woman. While she does have a name, she just, for me personally, that's how I interpret it, represents every woman everywhere. Because the things that happen in this book are, some of them are quite rough, but it's genuinely things that happen, and it's very frustrating. Just, it highlights those problems, and I think that's why I really like this book. I also found it very relatable, and just like in real life, the men in the book are so oblivious to these things. They don't think they're doing anything wrong. They don't see it. They don't notice any of these issues. But anyway, I don't want to get too into it because it's actually very sad. But I think it was just very good that there's a book that highlights this. Now we're getting to my third book, which is a thickie. This is The Grownups by Marian Keyes. I've never read any book by Marian Keyes, but then this one was also on Scribd, and we had the book at the bookshop, and I was like, I'm gonna go for it. And I have literally no regrets. This makes me want to read every single Marian Keyes books. I've gone looking, like I've received some recommendations for which ones are the best. But anyway, yes, this book is also really thick. It's a thickie. And it took me like quite a while to get through it, but I'm a very slow reader. So this book follows a family, and these 3 brothers, and they all have their like significant others and their children, and they constantly go on vacations together. There's a lot of like issues brewing underneath the surface, you know, there are things happening, and then one of the brothers' wives, what was her name? Kara. She gets a concussion, And then she just starts talking and basically spilling all the secrets. And the more she's talking about spilling secrets, other secrets are coming out, and that's where the story actually starts. And then we go back 6 months before this dinner where she just kind of spilled all the secrets, and we kind of see the build up to everything. But I had a really fun time reading this, and I think it involves so many important topics. Kara has like a eating disorder. It also deals with gender identity. One of the eldest brother, he has his youngest child is, they don't say whether the child is trans or non-binary. They talk about immigration and how immigrants and refugees are treated in Ireland. They even talk about how the refugee girls or women really struggle when it comes to their periods because they aren't provided with anything. They can't work, they have to stay in these places. There's a lot of things in this book, and it's very dense, I'd say, but it's still very good, and it's also very well written. It was a little sad though, but there was also a part where they went to Florence in Italy, and that was just so fantastic. That was fun to read about. The second book on my list is another one that I have talked about it, but it is truly one of my favorites, and that is Where the Crawdad Sings by Delia Owens. This is Delia Owens' first fiction book. She is a biologist or ecologist. She has like a degree in zoology and animal behavior. She's written like non-fiction books about these topics, but this is her first novel. There is a slight murder mystery in this, but the plot actually follows this girl, Kaya, who's kind of abandoned by her entire family. She lives in the marsh, and the book just follows her growing up, like from the time she was abandoned. I think she was like 6, 5. She was very young. She was a child. So it just follows her growing up and her experiences in the marsh. And she's very clever. Like she starts her own collection and sampling of like different animal species and plant species in the marsh. But then throughout the story, there's like this murder mystery. Someone was murdered, and Kaya becomes like the main suspect. This book was very, very sad, so I cried a lot. The ending, like not the end, like just the part before the end was not that fun for me, because that was when the whole court case was happening, and that's not generally something I enjoy reading about. But then the end comes, and I was like, so good. I can see the hype for this one. I understand why people really like it. It's totally worth it. I think so. Now we're going to be getting to number 1. The number 1 book is probably one of my favorite books of all time. It was my favorite book of the year, one of my favorite books of all time, and that's mostly because I find it very, very, very relatable. Not only in terms of like the main character, their personality, their experiences, but even the setting. That is because it is Eternal Audience of One, and this book takes place here in Windhoek, and this is like the first book that's fiction that takes place here, so like obviously I'm gonna like it. There's a lot of things. I dabbed it a little bit, and I do plan on making a whole video about why I found this book relatable, but I did. Also, the main character in here, he goes into the shop, you know, and literally the shop is like a shop the way I go into very often. It's on the street where I work. So basically the street where I work is mentioned in this book. I need you to understand that does not happen. That never happens. That never ever happens. Like, I need you to understand that. And then also the main character in this one, after school he goes to Cape Town to study. He doesn't go to UCT, he goes to like a fictional university. And I also went to the same area. I was not in Cape Town, but I was like close to Cape Town, a few kilometers out of Cape Town. That whole experience of after school going to study in South Africa was very familiar to me. He talks about the buses and the Christian movies that's always playing on the bus. I took the same bus same bus service, same Christian movies, although one time they did play Tinkerbell. That made it very relatable, but also a lot of the experiences he had at the university itself were very like reminiscent of my experience. There was a part where he talks about how all the white kids kind of like band together to get all the answers, to share all these like past exams or like information amongst each other, and then the like black and colored kids are just left out. And that is very, very, very true. The same thing happened at my university. I was in a very small class. We were not a lot of people. There was a WhatsApp group. We were not added. Like, that is a fact. And the fact that it also happens in this book makes me think, is this something that just happens often? Like, is just this just like a regular occurring thing all over South Africa? Is it just in the Western Cape? I don't know, but that is experience that this character had and I also had in my life. So for a multitude of reasons, this book was my favorite book of the year. And now you're probably thinking, okay, but what is this book actually about? So this book follows a guy. So he was born in Rwanda, but because of the genocide, his parents immigrated to Namibia, and then it follows him throughout high school. Then when he goes to Cape Town to study, and when he comes back, which sounds much simpler than it actually is, because as you can see, she's a thickie. It sounds basic, but it's really not, and I highly recommend this one. If you can get it, please do read it. It's very good. It's really very good, and I thought it was very accurate. So those are all the books that made my top 10 for this year. Thank you for watching. Leave me your thoughts, please, and I will see you later again. Okay, bye.